Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are gonna be working on my E89 Z4, installing an oil pressure gauge, and this is what I've got. This is AliExpress genuine 25 pounds Grady oil pressure gauge. Yeah, it is what it is. The reason why I'm installing the oil pressure gauge, I know it's not the ideal scenario and probably should have gone for slightly more expensive one, but right now I just want to kind of monitor my oil pressure, simply because a couple of weeks ago I drained the oil and there was some, well, metal residue, metal particles, and well, there are no big flakes, but as you can see, it's very glittery, and I think there's only a matter of time until the engine goes. But having an oil pressure gauge will at least give me, well, it will give me some indication of when it might go, and hopefully we can catch it a little bit earlier. I mean, ideally would say just take it out and rebuild it, and you would have been right. That's the best course of action, but right now I just don't have the time and the money. So I'm just gonna drive it, don't put too much stress on the engine, and we'll see how long it's gonna last. So, as I said, Grady, AliExpress quality. I think the gauge itself is not too bad, it's the sensor, which I will replace later, and we can see if there's any difference between two gauges, well, two sensors. Yeah, without further ado, let's get started. If you have an N20 engine, which in my case, this is exactly what this car came with, it's relatively easy to install an oil pressure gauge, and some cars like 3 Series, I think 5 Series, they do have like a dumb oil pressure gauge, which only like indicates when the oil pressure is below a certain level, and then it sends the signal to the ECU to basically turn the limp mode on, and just to prevent any further damage. In my case, for some reason, this car doesn't come with one. I don't know, maybe there is another place for it, but usually you can find it right here. You can see there's a little plug bolted in, and in our case we're gonna remove it. I bought an adapter, and the size and the thread pitch is, you want to go for M14, M for Michael, and the pitch size 1.5, and the other side, it depends on the type of the sensor that you have. In my case it's 1.8 of well, it's NPT 1/8. Yeah, this is the adapter that I got. In our case, the step one would be to remove this plastic cover, which is relatively easy. You just undo this hose from the solenoid, pop it right off, leave it here on the side because we have plenty of room here and we don't need to really disconnect anything else beside this. Step two would be removing the oil filter cap. Reason being, you want to drain as much oil as possible, and not from the engine itself, but from the oil cap. I don't know the exact terminology for this bit, but that's where the oil filter is residing. And when the cap is on, it's filled with oil, and when you take it off, it's gonna drain into the oil pan, which in my case, I overfilled it a little bit, so I might end up with a little bit more oil that, well, you would usually have. Yeah. Just drain it all out and put it aside. And as you can see, the oil level has subsided quite significantly, because this is the relief valve. This is the relief valve, and the oil just drains down into your sump. And I don't know if you can tell, but even from here I can see some metal residue. You can see like how glittery the oil is. So that's not great, and that's one of the signs why this engine might be on its way out. And they're quite expensive, so yeah, it hurts me to say, but yeah, I will have to take it out and redo it again. And in the perfect world, I should have done it right now, but we don't live in a perfect world. So anyways, once the oil is out, you might want to put something on top of it so you don't contaminate this area a lot. Not that you're gonna do much, but it's better be safe than sorry. So we're gonna put some paper towels over it, not in the cap itself, but just on top of it. And this is the plug that we will be removing. The plug is actually Allen head. I think it's H6, and it's normal thread. Lefty loosey. The space is a bit tight because you've got an ECU, all this wiring, so I don't know if this extension is correct, but I might have to switch it around. Yeah, this is it. This is the plug. If you do happen to have the oil pressure sensor in that place, you can buy an extension like a T thing, so you can retain your factory oil pressure switch, which is required for the ECU to know how much pressure, well, when it drops below a certain point. But if you want to add another oil pressure, which will give you a little bit, well, better reading and just understanding of what's going on with your car, you can also have like a multi-purpose, probably it's the wrong word, but like a dual purpose oil pressure sensor with a temperature sensor as well. So you can have one gauge for oil temp and the oil pressure, which is very handy. And to be honest, wish I had bought one of those. Yeah, I should have bought one of those. Anyways, now with this thing is out, I think this is time to actually do a little bit of unboxing and show you what's inside the box and what 25 pounds will get you these days. And by the way, a little bit of foreshadowing, I already had a pick inside, so some of the packaging is not how it came, but I try to keep it as, well, as factory as possible, if this term actually applies in this case. But yeah, so the box itself is actually quite nice. The gauge, again, I kept the this protective film on the screen. It's let's see if it's oil pressure. It's not a boost gauge as the box might imply, but this is exactly what we need. So this nice little foam that holds everything in place. Under the foam we have another compartment with a L manual, which is always nice and handy, and it's in English, again, a big plus. And these are the things that I had to actually get out of the box. So it's a wiring loom with the oil pressure sensor. It's got 3 wires, ground, power, and I assume signal. It's not super long, but I think it might be good enough for us. It's probably about meter and a half, I would say. I'm not gonna measure it, but it's long enough. So we have the oil pressure itself. We have this little loom. This is our, well, power, I guess, if we want to have a dim quality to it, so we can control how bright or dim it is. I don't know what the other two wires do. I mean, black is ground, red is power, something as, well, I don't know. We'll check in the manual. This is another piece of wiring. I think you can have like a controller module that you can plug all your sensors in, and it will act as a power source, I suppose. Little stand for the gauge itself, and this tiny foam double-sided piece of tape. We have a 6mm, well, 6mm, what I'm talking about, an Allen bolt and an Allen tool. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the entirety of the box. By the way, this is a cone shape thread, so you don't have to like tighten it very hard, because you're risking, well, damaging the adapter. It's just gonna self-tighten, and the adapter itself comes with this washer, so I don't have to put any sealant or any tape or anything like that on it. So we're just gonna go in and plug it in, and yeah, we'll see if it's gonna screw in. It should, but I've never tried. This is an old washer that came with, well, that plug. Just gonna wipe it down so there's no contamination and it seals properly. Don't fucking tell me. Okay guys, ignore everything what I just said. This is not M14. I think this is M12, because as you can tell, this thing is a bit smaller than this. So we'll have to buy a new adapter. Well, because I cannot continue with the sensor installation, I figured I'll just lay down the cables and figure out where the wiring should go, and yeah, just wire the gauge itself. So yeah, sorry for a bit of a mishap, but I've just ordered a new adapter, and once it's here we can finish everything. But right now, let's jump to the wiring. By the way, I forgot to mention, but I've disconnected the battery, so if you haven't done it, this is the right time to do it. Well, this is where we gonna route our wiring. I don't know if you can tell, but there's an opening down there. This is where we will try and aim. It's quite a generous opening actually. I just need to get to, oh yeah, totally forgot that there's no power and the windows don't go down. We will have to unbolt this panel. and I don't know how long, well, I know how long it is, but I don't know where it's gonna end. So ideally I would want to mount that gauge on that side next to the pillar, but if it's not long enough we might have to improvise and might have to sacrifice our little cabbie. I mean, I will keep it here, but I might mount my gauges right on top of it, and we can open this thing off so we can get the wires under it, so it's going to be nice and tacked and nothing will be like in your face. You can't even, well, ideally when it's done you shouldn't be able to see any wires going, but as far as I know this thing should be priable. I just don't have a tool thin enough to slide under it, but I'll try to find something that fits in, maybe an old credit card or something similar, something that I can just like go under and fine. But first thing first, we need to remove that panel so we can see where that hole is on this side. Well, thank you BMW, that opening is very generous. And yeah, you can see it better now. That's where our wiring is gonna go, and yeah, we don't have to modify, drill anything. That's very convenient. And I'm even thinking of using one of either this grommet or the other two grommets over here for basically routing the wiring from that sensor. And if we're gonna have more sensors or gauges in the future, this is a very nice setup for routing them all in one place and not creating any unnecessary mess. So let's try and fish it in and, well, just see how far it will go on just the length of the this, no, not this, where did I put it? Oh, yeah, this loom. Yeah, let's see how long it is. So yeah, this is where it's gonna be sitting, roughly in this area, and this is how I'm gonna route the wire. I'm gonna just attach it to the rest of the loom. Yeah, it's not that long at all. I don't think we'll have enough length, to be honest, but let's see. Well, after some time faffing around with all the trims and the gauge placement and, and the wiring, I ended up in a position where I had to extend the loom that the gauge came with, simply because it wasn't long enough. It was just about getting to a point where I could connect everything, but it was salt out. There was no slack in the wire, and I really didn't like how it was just sitting there. So I extended the entire loom by about 40-ish centimeters. It should give me enough slack and I can route the loom a lot better. This is what the cabin is, well, looking like right now. By the way, I tried different approaches. There's well, I'd say there are two ways to route the wiring inside the cabin. First of all, as I showed you before, there is an opening in the passenger footwell where all the standard wiring go through, and there's a big opening there that you can use. Very nice, very big, very easy to route everything, and you can just fish it around, put it through, and it will end up right about here. It's easier to drop it down because I was lazy, to be honest. I decided not to remove the cabbie, this panel. It might be a lot easier, but yeah, as I said, I thought I would save myself some time, which, to be honest, in retrospect, it might be easier. Yeah, it could have been easier just to remove this panel. It's not that big of a deal, just a bunch of bolts, but overall, it is what it is. There is another panel, however, well, another way of routing the wires if you want to put it on the driver's side. In our case, it's right-hand side. There is a grommet right under the brake booster. You can get to it by removing the screen washer bottle. In my case, I decided not to go down that route because I want to place my gauges, well, in the future they're going to be more than one, right around this area. I might create a podium or something, but in reality the distance between all the wiring was about the same, so honestly I decided to opt out for the easier way of going through the passenger footwell. Yeah, overall it's not too difficult. There are things that might get in the way, but overall it's quite neat and easy to work. Power, ground. The other two, I'm not so sure. I'm trying to read El Manuel, but I can't see. Oh, power supply wires. So white wire, ignition, red wire, battery. I don't have a white wire. White? So yellow, elimination, black, ground, to good ground. That's good to know. 12 volts to battery and 12 volts when the ignition is on. And ideally we need to put a fuse to it, which I don't have it. Yeah, maybe it's a good idea to invest in some fuses. Maybe even like figure out some kind of like a junction box for 12 volts, so I can in the future use it as this source instead of like splicing into same wire over and over again. Anyways, let me double check the wiring diagram and I'll try to wire this puppy up and see if we can get some live. I've found the right wires, so I'm gonna splice it into the loom that goes into the cigarette lighter. You've got brown is your ground, you've got this big chunky wire, green and, well, lime green I suppose, and yellow stripe. This is your positive wire, and the thin wire gray with a red stripe is your it's not technically a dimmer light, but it's your ambient light. When you turn the lights on, it basically eliminates everything, so this is your illumination light. And for the constant wire, constant 12 volt, I'm gonna use this chunky boy. This is the red and green. This one goes to the stereo and it's constantly on, so it's well, it's on when you got the key in the ignition, but you don't turn it into the ignition 1, if it makes sense. So it's constant 12 volt power, but for the gauge itself we need red wire, which are constant 12 volts. We have ground. The manual said that there's a white wire, which in our case is green wire. And this is the ignition on, and we have the yellow wire, which is for our light, aka the dimmer thingy, which we don't have. I will try to plug it into this wire and see if it's gonna do anything, but if not, it's just gonna be on when I have my lights on. Just kind of like keeps everything nice and OEM, I would say. Yeah, and by the way, how I know what is, I used my multimeter and checked everything. So if you wanna just do the same thing, it should work. And in my case, I actually traced that my cigarette lighter wasn't working and I had a blown fuse. And if you're wondering where the fuse box is, it's right there. Right, so I have these little things. Again, in the future I probably will have like a proper junction box for all the gauges and extra accessories, but right now I'm just gonna splice it in with these connectors. Not the best solution, but it's what I've got right now. Okay, everything is connected. I only left the the dimmer wire. I might connect it later, but firstly I want to test whether I've connected everything correctly. So let's give it a go and see if it's gonna fire up. Well, it's working. I don't know why the dimmer wire, what it does, if I turn the lights on, it makes it a little bit dimmer. I don't know if the camera actually can pick it up. Yeah, you can see the difference. It makes it slightly dimmer. Yeah, it's working great. The only thing that we need to do is, well, two things that we need to do is put everything back together, and the second one, the most important one, is actually connect the sensor, which I'm still waiting the adapter. Hopefully it will show up tomorrow and I can finish this video. The tricky part there is not to over tighten the sensor, because it's tapered, and if you keep cranking, and well, it's gonna break the actual. Let me show you. You can see there's a bit of a taper going on, so if you can, as I said, keep twisting it in, eventually that adapter will break. And yeah, I don't want to wait another week for another adapter. Right, the sensor is in. I'm not gonna tidy it up just yet. I want to see if it's actually showing anything. Well, the phrase "here goes nothing" has never been so on point. Okay, radio off, ignition on. Closed. The gauge is doing its thing. Let's start it up. Nice. The oil pressure is 0. not great. I hope it's not leaking. Hold on. I'm a total idiot, guys. All right, take two. Well, now it's connected. Well, as I said, it's been over a week, so I totally forgot what I left disconnected. Okay, ignition. Oh, ignition. I need a key first. Ignition. Ignition on. The gauge is beeping at me. Why? Can you please stop doing that? Okay, again I need to... Oh, maybe... Oh, I see. It's reading that the oil pressure is below 1. That's my warning. I forgot that I programmed that in. Well, programmed that in, I just set it up. Okay, it's showing some oil pressure. Let's check if it's leaking oil from the adapter. Yeah, it's working fine. 1.8 of bar at idle. It's still cold-ish, so it might drop down when it's up to the temperature. And I put the thicker oil a little bit, so obviously it will go down. I still need to find the well, the baseline for the oil at different RPM and temperatures and stuff like that. Maybe just a few numbers to give me a ballpark what's healthy and what's not, and just keep an eye on my, well, oil pressure, and hopefully I can catch it before it will, well, ruin itself, for the lack of a better word. But yeah, thanks for watching, and hopefully you liked it. As you can tell, it's very easy to install an oil pressure gauge on an N20 engine. Next time I would have gone for a multi-gauge. Oil pressure and oil temp would have been much better, and I wouldn't have to have like multiple gauges. I still will put boost gauge and probably a water temp, just to be on the safer side. I might replace this one with a multi-gauge for the oil and well, oil pressure and oil temperature. Yeah, I know it's a cheap knockoff of Trust, but Grady, but it does work, or seem to work for now. I'll keep driving, see if it's gonna give me any weird readings, and yeah, I will update you in a couple, well, just a couple of months, just to make sure that it's worth actually spending your more time than money, because money-wise it's not that expensive. It's the time and the hassle of taking off the interior, routing it, extending the wiring, because as I said, the one that came in the box, the loom was a bit short and I had to extend it. Yeah, other than that, it's a very simple install. Thanks for watching. Leave a like, subscribe if you like it, and in the next one we are gonna start working on my E36. Yeah, I'm haven't touched it in a while. Well, I've been poking around with a screwdriver, and the E36 is not as smooth as I thought it was. Anyways, as said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See you guys.